please, for the love of God, give me a hook. I need something to convince me that Dr. No's better other than nostalgia. It just sounds like nostalgia.
It's not nostalgia, man.
It's great.
Like
it's like Sean Connery.
And I also point out, let me
says
point this
Bond,
out.
James
It's like
Bond.
this movie, like Dr. No is, and I've said this before, the first 6 Bond movies are Bond's movies. Like those are the pure Bond films. Every movie after that is either a retread or trying to do something.
Yeah, this movie's Goldfinger, but it's not. This movie's not like trying to be something it's not. It's like it's a remake of Goldfinger, but it's a pretty great remake of Goldfinger.
Hold on.
Yeah?
I want Scott to say why he thinks this movie is better than Dr. No. Because from my point of view, and this is why I'm having trouble with what this, is that I feel like, Charlie, you've made a lot of great points. You're weighing in a lot of the arguments. Nans is listening to my arguments and be like, you make some good points. But Scott, I feel like, just wants to go home and be upset. And I can't tell if that's what he wants or he actually agrees that Charlie's right. So my point is, what does Scott actually think of this movie, and why do you think it's a better movie?
Dr. No's old. Again,
but
we
I don't
were
care
there
what you think
earlier.
about Dr. No.
It's
Do you
old,
really think in your heart of hearts,
old bad guy? No, yeah, in my heart
make
and
good
hearts.
arguments.
Of my heart and hearts.
Do you really go away and you're like, man, A View to a Kill is such a better movie than a film that like helped establish a classic character
because
and did
it's
a really
old
great job
and
of
it's
it.
simple and it's boring.
Like Goldfinger's old
It's
too,
too good.
But it's
too good.
It's,
Sorry.
Goldfinger's
it's
at
great.
the top.
It's fucking brilliant. McCurdy, you want to know my opinion? It's fucking brilliant.
Okay,
but
what
it's
specifically?
Old and it's boring.
But specifically, Scott,
it's
what is
old
your
and
argument
it's
to that?
boring,
Like,
McCurdy. Shut up.
why do you
It's
like A
old
View to a
and
Kill
it's
more
boring.
than Dr. No?
It's
what
old
about
and
A
it's
View to a
boring.
Charlie, is it working?
It's boring.
Scott, Charlie, listen.
Is it bringing you down,
this is what I'm going to
Charlie?
tell you. Charlie, this is what I'm going to
have
tell you.
to.
No.
For the sake of time and bad argument.
You want to hear my
I think we should
opinion,
win. I
McCurdy?
think it
Shut
should-
the fuck up.
You're
Shut
doing
your
the
mouth.
same thing you did
Shut
back
your
in Goldfinger.
fucking mouth.
You're doing the same
Shut
thing you
your
did back in
mouth.
Goldfinger.
Shut your mouth.
Make good arguments.
Shut
then.
your mouth.
Make good arguments.
Shut your mouth there. Shut your fucking mouth there.
You're turning Italian
no.
because
You asked for my opinion.
English
Shut your mouth.
lost.
Let's
Shut
hear
your
it.
mouth. Shut your mouth.
Because when I
it's
asked
old
you,
and it's
I didn't
boring.
bring enough
McCurdy,
booze.
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't bring
It's
enough
old.
booze at all.
It's
Hi. Hey, things got so heated there, we all had to go change our shirts. And Nathan died. So
took his own life tragically.
the vote was a little off balance, so Scott went and murdered Nathan. So we decided that A View to a Kill is better than Dr. No by way of vote. So McCurdy's been edged out.
Goodbye.
Kidding.
Okay.
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 Here's what we're gonna do. We took a couple days off to go rewatch these movies so that we could have a better idea of because after probably 3 hours of yelling at each other, we didn't come to a conclusion. So right now we're coming to a conclusion. I'm just going to start with a little opening statement, and then I actually reached out to you people, you fine folks on Reddit and YouTube. I'm just going to read through some of your comments, and then we're going to settle this. So without further ado, my opening statement. So far, really, the only argument that anybody's made in favor of Dr. No is that it's just so simple and simple and simple. It's simple. It's so simple. And I get that. And that argument made sense back when it was Thunderball versus Dr. No, but that was because Thunderball was obviously leagues beyond Dr. No so far as plot and action was concerned, being the fourth film, having more money, whatever, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, it had these weird plot conveniences and overly emphasized the spectacle over the story, and that's why we ended up putting Thunderball below Dr. No, and Largo weighed in on that too. Again, bad guy argument. It was bigger, but not better. But when it comes to A View to a Kill, it doesn't have those plot conveniences. It actually has a really solid plot with a great bad guy, great henchman, a great bad guy plot, and I'd say a better Bond girl overall, even if that Bond girl is Jenny Flex or Mayday, because you hate Tanya Roberts or whatever. The question is whether or not a couple of Roger Moore-era goofs are enough to ruin the entirety of A View to a Kill versus the simple perfection and low-key classiness of Dr. No, which, again, was pretty much everybody's argument. And I get it. Dr. No's fantastic. For me, it mostly comes down to Zorin versus Dr. No. You have Zoran himself, who they began investigating from the get-go because of his connection to the Siberian microchip pulled off of 003. And he's winning these horse races with inferior breeds, raising questions as to how he's pulling that off, which leads Bond to investigate his stud farm, where he finds Mortner's lab and the microchip hoard and discovers who Mortner is, that he's an ex-Nazi geneticist that experimented on concentration campers. Yes, I just said concentration campers.
Why do people watch this show? Why do they watch this show?
Good morning, concentration campers.
Okay, sorry, hang on.
What activities do we have today?
That's the worst thing I've heard all day.
Sorry, we're talking about actual Nazis. Okay, we're not Nazis. We're not Nazis.
We're Nazis. We're Nazis.
So our horse plot directly plugs into the backstory of Zoran himself when we come to realize that he's in fact a genetic experiment gone wrong by Herr Mortner. And that he's also a KGB agent run by our favorite Gogol, because Operation Paperclip, we all know these things, that the Nazis were split up between the Americans and the Russians. Whatever Nazi scientists they could get their hands on, they would. And so he ended up with the KGB, with the Russians, and then Mortner moves him and Zoran out of Berlin and over to, he basically is planted into the UK. It's a really interesting backstory versus Dr. No, who's just like a guy. And we come to know who and what he is specifically by way of investigating this whole microchip thing, thereby organically incorporating his backstory into the overall plot. Then throw in Mayday and the other henchmen who may or may not be genetic experiments gone wrong themselves. Then throw in Stacy and the fun action sequences, which get goofy, but never stupid like the gondola. And I still enjoy them and don't feel anger at watching them like the gondola. And so overall, you have a really big and enjoyable film that easily trumps the simplicity and Connery classiness of Dr. No, which is literally all anybody can say about Dr. No, is like, yeah, but when Bond says Bond, James Bond, and it's great, and it's like, yeah, I get that. But like story-wise, they're night and day. Again, I wanted to put For Your Eyes Only above Dr. No, but we all agreed that it had a bit of a convoluted plot and still suffered from early Roger Moore era wacky assassins and chase scenes that undermined the plot, that put it below Dr. No. But with this, it doesn't have those things. It just has some goofy moments. Again, Roger Moore era goofy moments, but not enough in my book to sink below Dr. No, which is rudimentary and prototypical at this point. That doesn't mean it's bad. It simply goes back to my overall argument that A View to a Kill isn't only bigger, it's also better and more enjoyable. But overall, this is an argument of style versus story, and story will always be the end-all be-all for me. And to bring it over to McCurdy, I just have one question. If the Beach Boys needle drop, the half-car chase, and the fire ladder scene were excised, would you still hold Dr. No above A View to a Kill?
It's a good question. It would make my argument harder to make, but I'd also say that for some other points after I watched the movie Dr. No a second time, I was like, no, there's other things that I'd missed the first time. Like it's been a while since I watched it, so rewatching the movie, I was like refreshed on some things that I was like, oh, I forgot about these things in Dr. No that I actually really like. So I don't know if that would sway my argument enough, but
which I get.
Things,
I get.
Again, like
Dr.
I
No's
said
awesome.
before, and I've reiterated this point multiple times, is that tone does matter with these movies. And if you're going to try to make a serious Bond film with like, you bring in the Nazis, concentration camps, like those types of things should warrant it to be like, oh, this should be a serious Bond movie. But
it's not like we go to the concentration camps. It's not like
I'm
we're
not
in
saying
there.
it does, but you're like,
you're
it's just like, again, all these movies.
You wanted this movie to be more Schindler's List?
No, I never said that.
Nathan couldn't join us, but he prepared a statement that McCurdy is going to read.
Okay. So me as Nance, this is what Nance had to say. I didn't get a chance to rewatch A View to a Kill, but I did watch Dr. No. It just reinforces my feelings. So what I said previously still stands. I thought A View to a Kill was okay, but not better than Dr. No. I did enjoy the car chase, but not the fire truck chase scene, which we had talked about at length. Yep. While the plot bad guy scheme is good, it's recycling if Goldfinger not necessarily bad to do, but not great either. Max Zorin as a character is cool, and I like Christopher Walken's portrayal, but I wish we got more of his backstory involvement with the KGB. Like I said before, this is me interjecting. I do feel kind of the same way.
There's a lot of tell, don't show.
And there's a lot of tell, don't show in Dr. No, but I'll get to that. But I think the issue I have is more, if you're going to introduce Russia and the KGB into your story, it better have a purpose other than to give backstory. And I just feel like it's missing a little something there.
Now, we literally have a scene of the Russians trying to take him out, but like it kind of ends in like a purposeless hot tub scene followed by our goofy like who moment. I get that.
The argument could be made that the Russia stuff intertwines at the very end when Gogol says, "Oh, my interests are also I didn't want Silicon Valley to be destroyed because we rely on American ingenuity." And like you could make that argument, but like it just doesn't feel strong enough in my vote. Anyway, back to Nathan's statement.
Sorry, real quick. Imagine going like behind the scenes back in Moscow, and there's some scene where they're talking about how Max Zorin is a problem and we got to get rid of him, and like even something like that. Previous
films where we've had Russia more involved with what's going on, where we back and forth between Russia's dealing with and the Americans are dealing with it, but that's just not there. Okay, so back to Nathan's statement. I think Max Zorin is a good bad guy, better bad guy than Dr. No. I think Mac's plot is more interesting, but I think maybe some points need to be deducted. I think he's saying points need to be deducted for it being unoriginal? ?
Pints.
We discussed some silly things in A View to a Kill, bringing it down. And Charlie argued Three Blind Mice was silly. I disagree. I think it's kind of sets the tone for being in Jamaica and also sets the audience up to have their expectations subverted. At the end of the day, I think the hook is James Bond. Beyond people having preferences for one or the other, I think Connery kills it in Dr. No, and Moore doesn't do as great in A View to a Kill. Connery's Bond is just cool and control and effective. Now, here's my statement, because I did prepare. It's much longer, but it's
real
more
quick, though, just before you jump into yours. It's not that I don't like the Three Blind Mice. It's more like my whole point is, and I do the same with Goldfinger all the time. My point is that arguments about Bond always come down to goofy versus serious, and my overall argument with that is that the world of James Bond is ridiculous, and every movie has something that's goofy about it, including Goldfinger. From Russia with Love, no. That's why it's like the crown jewel for me. But goofy doesn't offend me horribly unless it's stupid like The Gondola, where it's purposeless and it's just there to be like, look what we did, but it's with no purpose and it's lame.
And I think the argument can be made, though, and I think Nans and I both agree that there is a lot of what you were describing, but it doesn't offend you. And that's where I'm like, it offends a lot of other people and offends me. And I don't even like using the word offend. It's just
half car. Like if you enjoy it, like, because if you enjoy the gondola moment, I don't know, you might be like high or something. But but the half car is like it's enjoyable. I can't I call it a guilty pleasure,
Sure.
But I just don't want to discount. My whole philosophy is not discounting entire movies because they make one wrong turn. And we'll get to that with Daniel Craig. Because like eventually there are moments that feel out of place because it's so stark. It's so dark, stark, and depressing that any kind of goofiness is like, But I'm okay with like certain things being a little ridiculous. So far as they kind of help the plot, and there's nothing in A View to a Kill that kills the plot for me. In the same way that, as I pointed out in depth in For Your Eyes Only, the snow chase scenes, they undermine the plot. Again, it's like trying to be a smarter spy film, and instead it's like, well, we have to have these chase scenes, and they undermine the smart plot they're trying to play with. Whereas in this movie, the car chase with the cops, even if it gets a little goofy and you have your cop that's like, oh, man, it doesn't undermine the plot at all for me. So that's my piece. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Scott, shut the fuck up.
He's like, okay. Okay,
Get
so
on with
here's my case
it.
for Dr. No. And some of these I think you kind of touched on or alluded to, and I could easily see where you're going to be like, oh, I don't agree with that, but here's my piece. After watching Dr. No, yesterday and today, and just really kind of marinating and thinking about it.
Yeah.
So when comparing these two films, the answer should be obvious. I've said my piece on why I don't think A View to a Kill is a great Bond film, but let me focus on the positives of its competitor in this argument. Why is Dr. No a better Bond film? As Scott would put it, better music, better girl, better villain, and yes, a better Bond. From the moment the movie opens, we hear our first rendition of the classic Bond theme that plays throughout the series of its original guitar riff. That is when it hits you. You're watching a James Bond movie. I unfortunately don't get that feeling when I watch A View to a Kill. While Duran Duran's song is a great song to sing while you're driving to the grocery store to pick up laundry detergent, it doesn't put you in the mood of a spy thriller with swagger and grit. And yes, you might be saying, yes, the Bond theme is in this movie, but I think more often than not, it's the Duran Duran theme, either in orchestral form or its actual theme, than the Bond film.
That's common.
It is, but this movie, it's like, I instantly watched Dr. No, and I'm like, oh, I'm watching a James Bond movie. When I watch the last movie, I don't get that feeling. And let me keep going. Ursula Andress' performance of Honey Rider may be dubbed and allocated to the second half of the movie, but her character, her performance, of course, her looks leave an image that you can't forget. When she gives her character's monologue on her life with her father and how she was raped as a victim in the only subtle way films in the 60s could, damn it, I believe it. And when she tells Bond she killed a rapist using spider venom and only in a matter-of-fact manner tells him that it took him days to die, I believe it. And when she asks Bond if he has a girl of his own, right away we know what she's thinking, but more on this later. For some, she may only be eye candy and add an obstacle bonus for Bond in the end. What would a Bond film be without its gorgeous Bond girl? I can't really say the same for the late Tanya Roberts. Yeah, she passed away. I don't think we mentioned that. Yeah, she passed not very long ago. And while a character may be something to behold, and I'm talking specifically your character, and you made a lot of points about this, her performance is more than on the side of obnoxious most of the time. Next, we have the titular character of the film, Dr. No, played by Joseph Wiseman. We've gone on lengths of Christopher Walken's performance and character of Max Zorin, but I beg to differ much with Dr. No. He's held in elusive mystery throughout the film. He's the Harry Lime to the third man. While we see Max Zorin do some pretty horrific things,
Dead.
no one was really that scared of him. Not like Dr. No. Every henchman of No's can't bear to live if they are caught failing. That only leaves to the imagination of how terrible Dr. No really is. Dr. No sees his men as expendable, just as Max Zorin, but Wiseman's voice and presence lurks in your mind. Walken is Walken. His voice has become a party trick to entertain friends.
Hi, it's me, Christopher Walken. You know, I'm Fatboy Slim. I like to dance. I like to move. Unless there's a uncomfortable hunk of metal up my ass.
But Wiseman's voice is spooky and dangerous. I think anyone can play manic and laugh at their demise, but I think it takes some craft to conjure that what Wiseman's performance does. We may not care that much about his evil plot, and I beg the same for Zorin, but at the end of the day, Dr. No is what we expect out of a James Bond film, and Zorin feels like a corporate yuppie 80s villain. And then that leads to the fight between the Titans, Sean Connery in his first role of the character and Roger Moore on his last leg. If there's a hook, I think it is here. Connery is everything you want in a James Bond and everything you wish you aren't. He's cunning, witty, dangerous, gritty, and sexy. Every woman in this film has their eye on him and wants a piece, and we believe it. Moore is really hard to buy. While he gets in bed with a lot of women and he has his charm, it's hard to believe Moore pushing 60 could do all of this. He's better off buying an ice cream.
Yes, well, you get your clothes on. I'll buy you an ice cream.
The moment the film introduces Connery, as Bond, smoking a cigarette, playing Baccarat, and saying his infamous line, "My name is Bond, James Bond," and the theme swells, we want to be this guy. He's fucking cool. His back and forth wordplay with Dr. No, his smooth approach to getting into bed with Sylvia Tench, as well as other women, his unforgettable one-liners, such as, I think they were on their way to a funeral, don't let him get away, and you've had your six. It begs the word, it's iconic. But at the same time, and I'm going to drink to that.
No, I'll drink for you. I will drink for you.
Which, I didn't write this in there, but Roger Moore doesn't even have this there's nothing like that in the Roger Moore films. The pieces are kind of there for A View to a Kill, and I don't discredit you for the villain or the plot, but I don't think that's the whole package necessarily, especially when we're talking about like what is the essence of a Bond film? What is that guy with ice in his veins that you notoriously talk about. Like, I just don't see it in this movie, and I think it's in Doctor No.
That's a good point. That it's not like he doesn't in Fear Eyes Only when he Sparta the guy off the cliff. That's a good Bond moment. And then again, where you're like, Roger Moore didn't want to do it, and I'm like, Roger, But
Yeah.
I rewatching Doctor No, and again, the weird thing, and I'm about to read the comments from everybody online, and like, the number one thing, the moment you express an opinion on a Bond movie in a critical manner, everybody's like, you hate it. And it's like, no, I can criticize it and still
we're talking
love it,
about two things we like. Like, we're arguing that.
And which one's better? And everybody's, no, you just hate, or even like, You Only Live Twice being at the bottom, and everybody's, you hate it. Like, no, it's just not as good as the others, but it's still on the list in the same way that like everybody ranking the Beatles is like, Ringo Starr's at the bottom. And I'm like, yeah, but he's still a Beatle, bitch.
Yeah.
He's awesome. Like, Ringo is awesome. Try being as cool as Ringo Starr in your entire life. Your entire sad, pathetic fucking life. Anyway, so rewatching Dr. No, I'm like, I get it. It's so cool. Sean Connery is the man. Like I said, if he wanted to do butt stuff, I'd be like, yeah, sure.